Hi, Fatima. Can you hear me? Hi, Fatima. Good day. Can you hear me? Yeah, we cannot hear your sound if you can hear me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was unmuted. Thank you. So I'll
Okay.
need to go over again. Apology for that. So our topic for today is unleashing the power of data analysis and visualization in Excel. So our ground rule still remains. We have punctuality, and let's always have an open minded towards learning. There should be one class always. Let's participate as much as we can. If any question is asked, let's try as much as we can to answer and participate in the whole section. Let's respect each other, ask as many questions as you can, and whenever you have a question, raise up your hands and you will definitely be unmuted. So moving on to my I go by name Temitope Fatima, a business intelligence analyst. Um I guess everyone on this call is already familiar already. So I'll go on to the next to our speaker for today, who is my mentor. I will always say that. In person of Joseph Fadero. Joseph Fadero is a co-founder and lead trainer at Citizen Developer HQ in UK. Is an analytics instructor at Data Click. He's a co-organizer analytics extra mentorship program, and his professional experience is a Microsoft certified trainer. Is a Microsoft Power Platform super user, a Microsoft certified data analyst. He's also a Microsoft certified analytic engineer, a Microsoft certified Azure Data Fundamentals. Is a Microsoft certified Power Platform Fundamentals, also a Microsoft Power Platform super user. Is a corporate trainer with deep understanding of various adult learning methodologies, training methodologies, and instructional design. He has trained over 1,000 participants, including senior management, on data analytics, business intelligence, artificial intelligence, Power Platform, Microsoft Fabric, SQL, Microsoft Power BI, Microsoft Office tools. He has built a robust analytic system solution for clients across various industries, ranging from insurance, oil and gas, finance, and so on. He is a co-organizer of Analytic Extra Mentorship Program. Please let's give him a round of applause and let's welcome him in the chat. Welcome, Mr. Joseph. I'll stop sharing now so you can take over. Welcome, boss.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So, okay, I'm coming. Just one moment. Okay. So, good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. I trust you are good. Welcome to today's session. I hope day went well. Thanks for the warm introduction, Fatima, and I look forward to having an interesting session today. Right, so like Fatima has said, and like some of us who have been following the session thus far, we know that we've been talking about Excel, talking about Excel. So right now, I just want to be sure how many of us were attentive in the last session by, I believe that was Babatope, if I'm not mistaken. Can you list one key takeaway you gained from the session in the use of Excel? Can you type it in the chat? Just one key takeaway you gained from the prior session. You can type more than one. You can type one. It's fine. So, when to begin to type that, I will check the chat. X lookup, interesting. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing more response to just hitting the took away the. Okay, using advanced formula and function. Okay, okay. So I'm getting responses. So interesting, interesting, interesting. Okay, so I'll be sharing my screen shortly. So kindly let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, sir. It's coming up. Okay, I can see it now.
Okay, so good day, good day. Thank you for the agenda for today. We're going to be, we've had a bit of an introduction talking about myself and what we gained in the previous session. Today's session, we're going to be looking at some powerful things in Excel. We're going to cover a whole lot. But the key topic today, can you see my screen? I hope my voice is not breaking. Just let me confirm that. Hello? Can you hear me? I can't hear from Fatima. Okay. Okay, I'm getting reactions from the audience as well. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about, like I said, introduction to Power Pivot, mastering pivot table,
Yes, I can hear you
visualizing,
now.
okay, visualizations with pivot table, with pivot charts as well, and we'll do some questions and answers. Okay, so before I proceed, right, what's the key takeaway from data analysis? Anytime somebody says they want to do data analysis, right? Essentially, what they want to do is that they want to make data-driven decision. Am I am I correct? Am I correct? Or what do you think are the key point of why people would like to analyze data? Is it just to probably make fancy charts, fancy reports? Essentially, is that the key reasons of making doing data analysis? No. So data analysis essentially is to make data driven decisions. Decisions. So for that being said, I have an interesting story that I'm going to use to introduce our core concept today. Our core concept today. So I want us to meet Paul. He's the CEO of Joe Group, a business that specializes in food. This Paul, the CEO of Joe Group, is that specializes in food industry. Paul received a call from head, the HR department stating that, hi boss, our investors would like to know which of our restaurants to invest in. Which of our restaurants to invest in. And Paul and the CEO, a bit surprised, but thank you for informing me about the request. We need our analyst to prepare some reports and we share the list with you. So the key takeaway is Paul owns a food business in which he has investors, and the investors would like to know where they can invest in. Now, as the CEO of the company, Paul has produced some reports for the analysts to create. Paul would like to see the revenue by restaurant location, revenue by cuisine type, customer satisfaction overview, order frequency, loyalty analysis, top selling menu items, location based performing analysis, profitability by restaurant, and impact of discounts and promotions in the business. All of this data can help the management present to the investors because most businesses is either the CEO is investing directly to the business or you have foreign investors that come in and we like to know how the business is doing as a whole. Now, I want us to take a screenshot of some of these reports that we have right here. I want us to take a screenshot of it. If you are using your laptop, if you are using your phone, you can snap it, or you can take a screenshot on your phone as well. So these are some of the reports we were asked to create as analysts, right? Now, Joe, our CEO sent us this data. So I'm going to open the data. Our CEO sent us two data sets. So the first one our CEO sent us was this data called orders. This data called orders. Now I want us to take a look at this data with me right now. So we have order ID, customer name, restaurant ID, order date, quantity item, order amount, payment mode, delivery time, customer rating code, customer delivery. Now, with this data set that we have, I want all of us to look at this. With this data set that we have, looking at this data, can we go back to the question that we had initially that I said we should take a screenshot of it? Revenue by. So look at those questions, look at this data that we have. I would like to ask, can we answer all of the requests by the boss, for example, by the CEO with the data that we have? If you like to talk, you can raise your hand quickly. Um, if you would like to type in the chat, you can type in the chat as well. So looking at the data that we have, so I'll take two people since I have two people up. I'd like to hear your opinion with the data that we have right here. So, do you think with this data we should be able to probably get the sort of reports that our boss has asked for? Okay, so I'll be taking the response now. So, Fatima, you can unmute the mic. You can unmute the mic. You can mute the mic. Can you hear me, Fatima? Oh, my voice is a bit low. Wow, nobody said that. Is it better now? Is it better? Or is it still low? Can you hear me, Fatima? Or is it everybody? Okay, so people are complaining about the voice and the internet. I need to be sure is it a general issue or is this some issue? Is it just some people's issue? Fatima on this call.
Sorry, my network was is a little bit bad, so I'm with you. I can't see your screen now at the moment.
So let me take. Some people are saying I can hear you clearly. Some people are saying it's breaking. Okay, you know what? I'll stop sharing. We share. I haven't gone to. Okay, I'll stop sharing and we share. I think people are having network issues, but it's not a problem. I'll stop sharing and we share. Okay, can you hear me now? So I just tried to check my network speed. Uh, it may not necessarily be the best of the best, but I think so far it's 15. So 15 is not too terrible. So 15 is not too terrible. So I'm guessing it's me. You may want to check your network speed pass.com. So that will also help you to know if you are having network issues or not. So thank you everyone that responded. So yeah. I just want to be sure it's not my end. It's just some people's end. So thank you everyone. Thank you also for bringing up the question. Okay, so right now, like I said, ask the question. Looking at the data, can we conclude? Can we go ahead to analyze the data for the management? So I will take response from the people I can see their hands up. Fatima, can you mute the mic?
What were you saying? Sorry.
Okay, so I'll just allow the mic of I can see
Okay,
Abdul
Abdul
Malik,
Malik.
Elvis, and so Abdul Malik quickly. So looking at this data, okay, so quickly Abdul Malik, and I'll take from Elvis. I think those two were the people that their hands were up. So quickly, Abdul Malik, Elvis, your opinion on this issue. Can you share the question? Okay, so I asked you to
Yeah.
screenshot that maybe network. But these are the questions once again. These are the questions once again. Can everybody see my screen? Can you see my screen? Yeah, okay. See my screen, Elvis, Abdul Malik, Fatima.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay.
I
Okay.
can see your screen, boss.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Thank
We can't answer all the questions from that the first data set you showed us. But from the very first question, it says revenue by restaurant location, and we don't have the restaurant location in that data set. So definitely we can't answer all the questions from that.
okay. Okay, so thank you for pointing that out, Elvis. So that's a key observation. Now, the reason why I'm highlighting this is because in the real world sense, a large amount of time, a large scenario, you may not be given all the data you need to create a report. So the first thing first that you need to do before going out ahead to do any analysis or reports that you need to do is to ask a critical question, which is, do you have all the necessary data available for the report? So do you have all the necessary data available for the report? And the answer to that question, everybody, is no, right? The answer to that question is no, because the data is missing some critical element. Based on the report that was asked, the data is missing a location. It doesn't even have anything about our cuisine type. It doesn't have our menu items. It, it has some data on our restaurant, but it doesn't have as much information as we need to create this report. Now, the next question that we ask is, given a situation where you do not have the data to create the reports, what do you do? What do you do in that type of situation? Because today's class is data analysis, then we will talk about Excel, data analysis with Excel session. So in a situation where you do not have the data, tell me, what would you do in that situation? Okay. Delvis, it's Delvis I'm calling because Delvis was the one that responded earlier. Any other person that is available quickly? Okay, so I can see in the chat, Jerry said reach out to your stakeholder. Okay, that okay, more response, more response. Reach out. You can tell me what you normally do in that situation. I know some people, let me truthful, some people may end up creating some sort of report. Yes, right? It's that to source from data from your superior. Okay. 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 So essentially, you need to ask for the data that is available. Now, if that data is not available, you need to ask them to provide. You need to ask them to provide alternative data for you to be able to go ahead to do whatever analysis you need to do. Because the truth is, your data, with your analysis without your data is nonsense. Without the data, you cannot go ahead to, to analyze your results. So the key thing you need to, quick questions you need to ask before you do your analysis is, do you have all the necessary data available for the report or the alternative data available for the report? The second thing is, do you understand the request? You need to properly understand the request that your boss has asked you to do. Now, once you've understood the request that your boss has asked you to do, you can now, and you start building out your report. Have you answered the question? So as we go along with the analysis, we'll check if we've answered the necessary question from our stakeholders. And the last one is, are you ready to present your report or your findings? So these are key questions you need to ask probably during and before you begin your analysis in total. So do you have all the necessary data available for the report? Do you understand the request? Have you answered the questions for your request? Now, our boss, we told our boss we didn't have enough information. So he supplied us with this data called restaurants, which I should this data called restaurants and data called restaurants provides us more information about about restaurants. So in this data called restaurant, we have something called restaurant ID, restaurant name, cuisine, zone, crew, state, targets. State targets. Now that we have the data available for us, we have this restaurant data, and if we go back to our previous farm, we have this other data available for us. Now that we have the data available for this request, now to ask, how can we go ahead to now analyze this data? How can we let this data, how can we go ahead to analyze this data essentially now that we have the two data? I asked us what we did in the previous class because I know in the previous class, some people said we covered topics like lookup, if I'm not mistaken, right? If you need to get information from one table that is on another table, how would you go ahead to do it? Example. So I can see we can use VLOOKUP to connect both tables, use lookup functions. Okay. Interesting. You have to make them to using a unique identifier, yeah, which is essentially lookup. Somebody said pivot table. I also like that answer. I also like the answer. So I would like to even have a discussion. So we pivot table. How did we connect this data together? a pivot table. Someone said use with XLOOKUP and use index and math. Now, all our answers are valid. They are valid. You can do that. You can do that. But essentially, what we may end up doing is we may end up doing something called duplicating the truth and inducing redundancies to our data. What do I mean by that? So if you are doing like your VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP, let's take this file for example. So you want to get the restaurant name, you come to this table if I'm not mistaken, and based on the restaurant ID, right? We can do a lookup, a VLOOKUP to this table and get the result of our restaurant name. Right? That's the process most of us will do, based on what I've seen in the chat. Right. So that is in that sense with work, that's in that sense with work. But the issue that we have with doing that is that first of all, this table will grow. This table will grow in the sense of it will increase the number of columns that we have in this table. If we do that, we have to add more columns in this table. And also the question is, if they are always updating this data, if they are updating this data periodically, probably every 3 months, maybe some periods in time, like we add a new restaurant, you will have to go back to reference that formula or function that you wrote, essentially. Now, so why am I talking about all of this? Somebody dropped a brilliant answer in the chat. A lot of the answers in the chat are good as well. But why am I going about explaining all of this? So that we understand the problem before we go ahead to do the solution. Now, Wale will release a video, and there are videos on the channel as well on creating reports with Excel and blah blah blah. So you know how to create that, but you need to first understand the reason why we are doing certain things. Right. So essentially, with that being said, we can use VLOOKUP, we can use XLOOKUP, but like I said, that introduces redundancies into our data. And when we get into concepts into Power BI, you'll be introduced to a particular concept which I'm going to introduce briefly now, which we touch more elaborately in Power BI called data modeling. Data modeling. So data modeling in essence is creating relationship between two or more tables based on a key that joins those tables together. That is what data modeling is in essence. Now in Excel, you can do data modeling in Excel with a tool called Power Pivot. Now somebody may mention that we use pivot tables? Assuming if all the data were on this cell that we have, right, on this single sheet that we had, pivot table will work perfectly for our request. Pivot table directly will work perfectly for our request. But because we don't have all the data on this single sheet, we need to join this data together using a tool called Power Pivot. And if you remember in the earlier session that I had, ways of reporting in Excel, I stated you have a method called using pivot table, Power Pivot, and DAX as ways of creating reports in Excel. Now we're going to be touching that in today's session. So we have the files right now. Uh, what I'll just do is I'll make this a table. It's always best to have your data in a table. So by Control T, I can make this a table just to be sure. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. I'm going to close this file, and I'm going to close this file. So I'm going to add a new Excel, file. So there are various ways we can bring our data into Power pivots. There are various ways we can bring it. We can bring our data into Power Pivot directly in Power Pivots. In Power Pivots, we can bring our data in directly to Power Pivot. But I just want to probably introduce us to the concept of Power Query. That's also another powerful tool in Excel, which can allow us to clean data. Now, for those of us who may not have Power Pivot on our living interface, what you need to do is on your Excel, you go to your file tab, go to your options. Under your options, go to your add-ins. Please confirm everybody can hear me clearly. I'm not moving too fast. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, so I like that. Yes, yes. I can see. Okay, I'm seeing the yes. Okay, so that's good. So under your Excel, you go to your file tab. Under your add-ins, you have something called manage. Manage. You have Excel add-ins. You have. If you click on this drop down, you can change to something called COM add-ins. These become add-ins. Then you can press go. Then under this COM add-ins, you have Microsoft Power Map for Excel. You can see that is also good. You can see this Power Pivot for Excel to have it enabled, and you can click on OK. On OK. Now, so that's how you get Power Pivot on your living interface in Excel. For those who don't know, so you can always watch the recording as well. So, like I said, there are various ways we can bring our data into Excel. Now, if you are bringing data normally into Excel, the tool that allows us to do that is a tool called Power Query. It's an ETL tool. It stands for Extract, Transform, and Load. It allows us to bring data from a particular source to another location in Excel. So we can use Power Query to do that. If you want to bring your data directly into your data model without using Power Query, you can do that in Power Pivot directly. But because we've not really touched the concept of Power Query in this mentorship thus far, I'm going to introduce it a bit. When in the Power BI class, it's important to note like 90% of the things you will do in Power Query, in Power BI, you can replicate them in Excel, like 90%. But there are some things you may be able to do in the Excel one. There are some dynamic things you may be able to do in the Excel one that may not exactly be as fluent in the Power BI. And the Power BI own has more connectors. Power BI own has more connectors. But that's just something we need to know by the way. So for you to bring your data into Excel or from whatever source, if you are using a version of Excel 2013 upwards, you should have this get data option. This get data stands for Power Query. Is an ETL tool, stands for extract, transform, and load. If you click on this get data tab, you have options to select from file. You can select from Excel workbook. If your data is in an Excel workbook, if your data is in a text, if it's in a PDF, you can bring it from a folder, from a SharePoint folder, you can bring it. If your data is from anywhere else, there is no any of these sources, you can bring it. If your data is on Azure, you can bring it. And there are a lot more sources as well. Now, I'm not here to really teach us Power Query, but it's something we can explore. So under this from file, I can select from Excel workbook because our data is in an Excel workbook. So the moment I've selected that Excel workbook, the Power Query interface will load. I just need to first select, let me select one of the files, probably the borders, click on this import button. Now, so I have two things when I click on that import. I have something called the tables and I have the others data. This others data, the one in this blue tick right here is the table. If you remember, I said I want to make my data in a table format. So it's normally best if you connect to a table directly instead of the sheet because the sheet will lead you to do more cleaning process if you connect to the sheet. But the table is a structured format which can allow you to connect to it nice and easily without having to remove some necessary blank rows. So, like I said, it's best you call it, we connect to the table, and sometimes it's best you name this table. Most times, it's best you name this table properly. So after I've selected what I want to connect with, I have two options right now. I have load, I have transform data. I have transform data. Now, when you're working with Power Query, as much as possible, unless if you're the one that prepares the data yourself, and which I myself will probably advise you should always 90% of the time click on this transform data is what the load will do is it will load the data directly into your Excel. You have another option, load to, which we are going to touch, which is the essence of this demo. We're going to touch load to later, but click on this transform data. The transform data. I say Power Query is an ETL2, E for extract, T for transform, and L for load. So click on this transform data. Actually prepared it. I know it's clean. So if you also see there's something called column profile, it's showing the it's showing the anybody here?
Yes, I can hear you. Come on.
Okay, there's something called column profile showing the percentage of how clean it is or how dirty it may be. So like I said, I've produced I did the data, so you don't have to worry too much about it. So you have a section here called applied steps. Applied steps. So what this applied steps does is every transformation you do in Power Query is every transformation you do in Power Query is saved on this applied step. There's no Control Z in Power Query. So there are different transformations you can do in Power Query. For example, if you had this customer name and you wanted to split the name into first name and last name, all these names are first name, you can go to transform. You have something called split columns, and you can split it based on the delimiter. You have that option to split name by delimiter. You have the option to remove duplicates. If you right click, you can remove duplicates. You can remove columns you don't want. You can remove errors, you can replace values. There are a whole lot of stuff you can do on Power Query. But Power Query is not the bone of contention today. It's not what we are going to touch on today, but I just wanted us to have a feel of Power Query. Now, what I can do on Power Query also is I can change the name of this file. Under this name, under this property, it's showing table one, I can call this others. You see, I didn't name the table before, but now I can name it here. It's called others as well. I've named it here. Now to bring in the second file, under this my home tab, I have a section called new source. New source, I can select from a file and I can select from Excel workbook and I can bring in that second file called restaurant. Click on import. Select this. I didn't name that table again. Click on OK. So I have the restaurant data. I can come here and rename this restaurant. So once I've done this, I've loaded my data, this with Power Query. The beauty of using Power Query rather than using Power Pivot directly, if you want to do transformation, like if I want to remove some columns I don't want or delete some rows I don't want, I can easily use it with Power Query directly. And like I said, when you get to the Power BI class, you will be introduced more into Power Query as well. But I just wanted us to know we can use Power Query in Excel as well. And using it in Excel, there's also some benefits as well. So under this option, under this home tab, you have this close and load. This close and load. Once your data is in perfect condition, you can click on this close and load drop down, and you have this first option which most people click close and load, but you have a second option that most people, even most uh, expert analysts, do not know what the full capability of till today is. So I'm going to select this close and load too. And once I select this close and load too, I have various options. So if I want to load the data into a table directly, I will load it into a table. If I want to load it into a pivot table report, I'll load it into a pivot table report. If I want to load it into a pivot chart, I'll load it into a pivot chart. But if I want to load it to only create connection, I will load it into only create connection. So what this means is that, which I will show us once I've done it, click on this only create connection, and under this option which is very, very important, I'll kind of, let me see if I can zoom in into it. This add to data model, add this data to data model. So this option is very important. Add this data to data model, and I can click on OK. I can click on OK. So the moment I've done that right now Power Query, with Power Query, the moment I've done it with Power Query, I want us to look at my screen and tell me what do you observe? What do you observe? Do you see the data that we brought in anywhere? Can you see the data we brought in anywhere? Okay, so by anywhere I mean on the Excel sheet itself or any of the sheets. So the data is not on any of the sheets, right? But we can see the queries. The queries mean that the data was loaded. The data was loaded somewhere. Data was loaded somewhere. Yeah, so we can only see the queries and connections. So what this does is we've loaded our data, but what we are doing is we're doing it in an efficient mode where we don't have to be storing the data, duplicate of the data in the same file. So what this will do is Excel, as we know, normally have a limitation on number of rows and columns. But the beauty of this is once you load it to a connection is stored, and you check that add to data model is stored in your data model, and your data model can collect a large amount of rows of data. It can collect a huge number of rows of data. So where did our data go to, and how can we see our data? So if we click on this Power Pivot tab, click on this Power Pivot tab. Now where we will be getting to Power Pivot, as you see, you have this manage model. Manage model. So under this manage model that we have right here, we have our orders and we have our restaurants. Can we see where the data is stored right now? See our orders and we have our restaurants. I'm going to zoom in on this. we have our orders, and we have our restaurants, which is quite good. So this is the Power Query interface. So like I said, with Power Query itself, you can bring in your data into Power Query itself. If your data is in a database, SQL database, you can bring it in, or from data service or from other sources, you can bring it directly into Power Pivot, directly into Power Pivot. But if you use the Power Query route, it also allows you to do some further transformation to your data as well. So you have this refresh option, you have this pivot table option, which we are going to go into. Then we have this section called data view, diagram view, show hidden, calculation area. Now I want us to look at my screen, and I'm going to go to something called the diagram view. The diagram view. The diagram view. So this is the diagram view of our data. Now, for those of us who may have had a bit of background with Power BI before, does this interface kind of look familiar? Or if you worked with SQL before, and you've done something like entity, entity diagram, yes, this diagram looks familiar. Exactly. So with Power Pivots, you can create your data model just like you create with Power BI. The same process. The same process. Now, for you to be able to create your data model between one and other, one between two tables, right? You need to understand what is the column. Yeah, somebody gave me the right SQL term for that. Yeah. What's the column that is common between the first table and the second table that allows us to know more information about the second table? Looking at these two tables, what column do they have in common? Column, all fields that we can see here are the column names. What column do they have in common? Okay, so I'm seeing responses in the chat. Okay, so the column they have in common is the restaurant ID. Now, if we look at the data properly, the others is on a daily business. The others is what normally occur. People come into the restaurant and they buy certain products. They make a order for a product and they get some information based on that product, right? But we have a table telling us more information about these orders. And in a data model, what you typically have is something we call fact and dimension table. What you call your fact and your dimension table. Your fact table is your daily transaction, which is this orders table that we have. Is the table that on a day-to-day basis is normally grows, and your fact table will normally contains your IDs and your reporting keys and your date column, not your date table. I'm saying your date column. Your fact table will normally contain it. But your dimension table is telling you more information about a specific fact. For example, if you want to find out more information about this restaurant, if we are doing VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP, we look at this restaurant ID here, and we look at this restaurant ID here, and this restaurant here provides more information about this restaurant that we have in this table. It tells us the restaurant name, the type of cuisine they offer, the zone the restaurant is in, the category the restaurant is in, state, the target of the restaurant. So each restaurant have been given a daily target to work with. So for us to connect these two tables, creating relationship is very easy in Excel, Power BI, but you need to understand what what your fact and what your dimension is essentially. So I'm going to drag this restaurant table to this restaurant ID to this restaurant ID right now, to this other's ID. So once I've dragged these two together, can you see this type of relationship that was created? This type of line that was created. What do we observe when we look at the line? Let me zoom in on this line. What do we observe when we look at this line? So we can see, for those who may not be, what we have here is we have one, we have a line saying one side, and we have a side saying many. We have a side saying many. So essentially, what we created is a type of relationship commonly known as the one-to-many type of relationship. And what this says is that one restaurant here is related to many occurrence of that same restaurant in this other table. In this other table, because the truth is, a customer can come here and buy from the same restaurant. We have different customers, so they can buy from the same restaurants here. But that what that will mean is that the restaurants will be duplicated in this orders table. In this orders table, the restaurants will be not necessarily duplicated. What I mean is that a customer is coming in day one, day two to that particular restaurant. So in a row to row basis, we have a particular restaurant increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing. But on this restaurant table, we only have, because we need to find out more information about the restaurant. We have a table here that's telling us, oh, this is a restaurant in Lagos. Let's say this is XYZ, XYZ restaurant. This is the cuisine they serve, this is the zone they serve, the category they serve, the state, and the target. So this restaurant is unique and it provides more information about that particular restaurant. And I said the type of relationship we have is something called a one-to-many. Essentially, if you are doing a lookup, this erases you from doing lookups. And if I right click and click on edit relationship, we can see the relationship that we have between these two tables. It shows the field that is related to one another. The restaurant ID here is related to the restaurant ID here as well. And I said the relationship is one to many. We also have other relationships like many to many, one to one. I'm not going to touch on that subject right now because I know we elaborate, your facilitator will probably elaborate on that in Power BI as well. But this is like a core concept that you need to know, that in Excel, you can go ahead to build a simple data model as well. And as you progress in the class, you can connect some things you've learned in Excel with some things you've learned with Power BI together as well. So now that I've created this relationship, now I've created this relationship, I can create a pivot table that will allow me to create report based on these two fields. And to create that pivot table is very simple. Under this Power Pivot, I can select this pivot table drop down and select pivot table. Do I want it in a new worksheet, existing worksheet? I can have it in a new worksheet. Now, the moment I've created this pivot table, this pivot table fields, this is a pivot table field, I can now go ahead to start building out my reports, Now, for those of us who may have not used pivot table before, I don't want to assume that probably maybe all of us have used pivot tables before. What we have here essentially is something called the pivot table fields. You have your table name, the name of your table that you have there. And once you connected those tables together, you have this symbol that is showing right here. You have the columns that they have, the column headers they have in the table, the orders, the restaurant column, and you have section here that allows you to build your reports. You have your filter, your column, your rows, and your value. Your filter, your columns, your rows, and your value. Now, for your own pivot table, it may not look like this. For you to get this view that I am on, you can click on this setting button. The default one is field and area section stacked. The one I'm using is side by side, field and area side by side. So you can select it. So I prefer this. It looks neater this way, in my opinion. Now, for you to create reports in pivot table, it's very, very easy. Like it's very, very easy. But one thing you need to know is in your filter, rows, and column, what goes into this field are something called your categorical fields. Your categories goes into this field, your filter, your column, and your rows. Your categories goes into this your field. Why your values, what goes into your values are called your quantitative fields. By quantitative fields, I mean things you can measure, you can aggregate that will probably make meaning. Things you can sum up, you can do average on. For example, your amount, your revenue, your cost, your units sold. Those are things that go into this your value field. And once you've learned that, creating reports in pivot table is as easy as clicking and clicking on two buttons. Let me show you what I mean. So I want to see the uh, restaurant and the order amount. Let me just even see that. The restaurant name and the order amount. I just need to click on this restaurant. It goes into rows by default and click on this orders amount. The order amount goes into my values by default. And with that, I get the information of, oh, what's the report for our restaurant and the amount that they made from the restaurant. That's a simple report that I've generated right now. So I will share the file with us after the class. I'll share the file with us. I wanted to share it prior to the class, but a lot of things went in the way. So I'll share it after the class as well. And with that, you'll be able to play around with it and you'll be able to build out more reports as you like. So this is how you build out a simple report in pivot table. Now, the default aggregation in pivot table, you will see it's showing sum. If I want to see the average of the restaurant and the other amount, under these values, I can change this from sum, right click. I can right click or click on this dot here and I can click on value field settings. Under this value field settings, I have this stuff called summarize values by. If I want to see the count, I can change this to count of other amounts. This changes from the sum to the count of other amounts. If I want to see the average, I can change it to average. If I want to see the sum, the mean, the max, I can change those fields based on the value field setting that I have here. So if I click or click on this summarize values by, and I can just select it or value field setting, I can come to sum. So this gives us one report. So by value field settings, I can easily change the report. I can come here again, copy this pivot table, Control C. Once I've highlighted the pivot table, I can copy it here again and I can paste it somewhere else to be able to create another report. Let's see our restaurants by our location. Restaurants by our location. Location. Sorry, what do I want to see? Our location and the amount. So I think that's state. What this will show me is that the amount of orders made based on the particular state. The particular state. Now, this is using the default aggregation. The beauty of using Power Pivot is that you can also write something called DAX. You can write formula language expression using DAX as you proceed. So I'm seeing our time is slowly coming to an end. There are a lot of things I would love to show us as well, but this is one thing. So this is our location and the other amounts. By default, it's showing us all our location and the other amount. If I just want to see our top 5 location, I can click on this drop down. And under this value filters, I can click on top 10 and I can change this to top 5 location by the other amount. And it will show us our top 5 performing location based on the other amounts. That's one simple report that you can generate with it as well. Now, let's go back to, before we go back to our data model. So I've showed you two simple, how you can simply create report. For those who may not know, the difference between the row and the column is just the orientation. If I drag this to columns, the report just looks this way instead of if I drag it to rows, which on rows it looks more larger. It looks more proper. So you can go ahead to start playing around creating different reports based on the request your boss has given you as well. Now, if I want to introduce a filter to this report, I can add a filter by, let's say I want to filter this by accusing. I can add a filter to this top section, and this adds a filter button to it. Now, filters are good, but truthfully, slicers are a little bit more. You may see more requests of building out slicers than filters, because filters has one limitation in the sense of once you select multiple items, it's hard for the users to know what exactly is selected. Though with DAX, you can solve that problem, but it's hard for the users to know what is selected. So we filtered, if I filter this to a particular cuisine, let me say I want to filter this by African cuisine, all our African cuisine. It filters the orders for African cuisine by this location that we have right here, by this location that we have here, right here. So that's what the filters does. Contrary to filter, you can use something called a slicer. So under this pivot table analyzer, I can include a slicer. And under this slicer, I can click down and select cuisine. So this selects the specific type of cuisine I want to see. And right now, can you see, we can see the cuisine options right here. We have the African, Arabian, Belgian, Chinese cuisine. And if you notice, when I clicked on this, it's only affecting this report, not affecting this other report. If I wanted to affect this other report, on my slicer, I can click on this slicer and click on something called report connections. Under this report connection, I can select this other pivot table. And the moment I select on this other pivot table, now once I click on a particular cuisine, it filters the both reports, and all you just need to do is properly align your report to make your presentation nice and good to your boss. Now, I know time is a bit fast spent, but this is using slicers, simple pivot tables, simple amounts as well. I'm sure in your project you use a bit of that as well in your project. So right here, back to Power Pivot. Just one last thing we note about Power Pivot. I can go back to the manage model. So these are data model. Now, if you notice, in this our data model, We have a nice data model here. It's nice, it's simple, it's efficient. But one thing we need to note when we are doing data modeling is we need to note something called the W's, the four W's. What your data model normally addresses is the who did what, when, and why. So what I mean in the sense of when did it happen, or who who dimension, talking about who was it, like giving us more information about the particular restaurant. When tells us about the particular time or particular date period it occurred, essentially. So one thing we need to note when we are doing our analysis without comparison of dates is not really, I wouldn't say not really analysis, but it's not really rich analysis if you do not add a date, a date comparison to your analysis. And in Power Pivots, we can automatically create a date table for us in Power Pivots. We can automatically create a date table for us in Power Pivot based on our data in Excel. So under the Home tab, you have the Design tab. And under this Design tab, if I click on this date table, and I can click on New Date Table, Power Pivot will automatically create a date table for us. And under this date table, you can see our year, our month, our day of the week, our month of the month, and more information on that. So this Power Pivot automatically creating our date table. Now, with that being said, I can drop this like this, take this up. So I can connect this dates right here with our others dates because they are connected together. And what this date table will allow me to do is it will allow me to perform more analysis based on your data. So if I want to see our data based on probably days of the week, let's say Tuesdays, Thursday, Wednesday, I want to see what's happening based on those days of this week. This calendar table can allow me to filter my report based on that. So I'm going to go to Home. I can click on this Excel icon to switch back to Workbook. Switch back to Workbook. And now that we've added that data to our data model, we have this calendar. This calendar right here. Let me click on More Fields. I can now add a slicer. Let me add a slicer for week. Pivot table analyze and insert slicer. Based on that calendar that we've generated, I can add a slicer for days of the week. Let me see. Days of the week. Okay. I can clear my filter. Clear my filter from this. Okay, so the dates are not properly brought in as well. So probably that's why I did identify these days of the week. But that's just also to tell you you need to ensure your date is in the proper format. I'm sure probably the date wasn't in the proper format. But with that, Power Pivot has automatically built our date table for us. But it's always good to check the results it did. So I think I'll need to have properly transformed my data in Power Query. But like I said, the beauty of it is we loaded this data with Power Query, so we can always edit the data in Power Query. And once we do that, our calendar table should be perfect. So that is just an example of how we can do data analysis in Sense using Power Pivots, Power Query, pivot tables in Excel. Now, the beauty of this, and this is my parting gift to us, is that you can automatically schedule a refresh based on this data. I know most people don't know you can actually schedule refresh, something like schedule refresh in Excel. Most people don't know that, but you can actually do that. in the sense of under this, I can click on my queries. My queries. I'm loading my data from Power Query, so I can click on this. Let me click on this drop down properties. So under these properties, so the very first one is this orders data. Right now I can click on it, click on these three dots, click on properties. Under these properties, this orders data, here we can see refresh every, I can set this data to refresh every, like, let's say every 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, depending on how frequently my data will be updated. So for example, let's say my Western data is going to be updated every, maybe I can schedule, I can set a refresh based on that. Now, another refresh I can do is refresh data when opening the file. So if I'm just opening the file, I want the data to automatically refresh. I can do this. I can do this with this query properties. And once I do that, the data will be refreshed once I make an update for us. I can showcase it actually works. I use it a lot in a lot of projects, but under these properties, you can set refresh for your particular data. Now that's my parting gift for us essentially. And with that, you can go ahead to build a lot of robust analysis with Excel. So I did a lot of, we actually did a lot of stuff, touched on a lot of stuff, pivot table, power pivot as well. I ate a little bit into your time. I'm sorry about that as well. I hope we learned a thing or two today's session, and I'm sure I will send the file to us as usual, as promised. And I'd love to hear our feedback on LinkedIn as well, and even right now during the session. Okay, so any question for me? Any question for me? Any question for me before we call it a day?
Okay, we have like 4 people ends up, so I'll be unmuting them, starting from Michael.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Olufumi, please, can you unmute your mic?
Hi, thank you. Good evening. I
Good
want to
evening.
ask a question with regards to Power Query. So, while working on Power Query,
Mhm.
I did some filtering, and you know that with Power Query, immediately you do the when you do the when you take the action, you have to click on, you have to go back to wherever you left off before you can get back this the full data. So I filtered and could not get my full data back. So I don't know what to do, what action to take to get the full data back. It's more like trying to take an action in the data. That's why I filtered it out, and then I can't get my full data back. Please advise me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So under this, so somebody asked, how do we even get back to Parkway? So I think somebody asked that before, but I'm going to show that person that and also answer your question. So under these queries and connection, I can hover around it. I can click on edit. So if I ever want to make transformation on this data, I can come back here to edit this data. Now, so the beauty of the question you asked, for example, let's say for example, these orders, I maybe mistakenly filter this data to, let's say, Charlie and Chitney, right? Are you with me? So Charlie and Chitney, you mistakenly filter the data like this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you need to know how you can go back to what you had before. So, so the beauty of Power Query, like I said, is under these apply steps, every single transformation step you've done is recorded in this apply step. So if I just even cancel this step that I've done, this filters row step takes me back to the data before I filter the rows. Another alternative, if you understand the language going on behind Power Query. The language going on behind Power Query is the M language. I didn't want to touch on it now because I know you guys will still probably touch it on Power BI. But essentially, Power Query is kind of like a click tool in the sense of everything you may need to do, you can easily just like click, you can click on a button and it will do the transformation for you. But behind it, you have codes that are written for every action you take. For every action you take. So let me show a typical example of what I mean. So this is Charlie and Chini, right? Click on OK. I'm going to filter this data. So under this formula tab, can you see table.selected rows dot each name Charlie customer name Chini? So under this formula, this M code that we have right here, I can edit this code. Maybe, oh, I didn't need to change it to Chini. Maybe I wanted to change it to David. I can just change this name here and type David here. And it changes that filter that I've done. Now it may be a lot easier to just click on the drop down and select David. But it's just to show you that every step you take is essentially a code written at the back end of Power Query. I can cancel this filter under this apply step, I can cancel the step to go back to a previous step essentially. I can come to, if I want to see all the codes that are going on in my Power Query, under this view tab, I have something called the advanced editor. The advanced editor gives you the M language behind your codes, what you've been doing, all the transformation you've been doing. You will see it in the advanced editor. This is talking about the Excel workbook I have. Uh, if you know a bit of the M language, you can even manipulate this as well. But it dependent on your use case now, you may not even need to touch this language at all. Like I said, if you just want to cancel a step, you can just click on the cancel step in the applied steps. I hope I answered the
Please,
question.
not entirely actually. So I'm
Okay.
trying to make an effect. I'm trying to change some features, change some values in the Power Query. That's why while trying to transform the data. So because I filtered and changed the data, I am not. I want the effects to remain. The only effects that I don't want to remain is the filtered data. But every other thing that I did, I want them to remain. The values I have changed. Does it mean that I can't? I can't do that anymore?
No, so you can, I understand what you're saying. So you can delete a step before that step. I don't know. Let me just do another step again. So let's say this one, I'm going to rename this to customer. You know, remind me to. So I'm going to rename this to customer. Let's say this, I'm going to change it to date. So what you said is you wanted to keep all other steps except from that filtered row step, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So right now, these filter rules that I have here, I can just right click on this and I can do delete. Power Query will want me. Are you sure you want to delete this step? Deleting this step may have subsequent steps which could cause your query to break. I can decide to delete it. But if you see right here on the query, my query still goes on. Now it also depends on the particular query that you have, essentially. If your query, a large amount of your query, like I said, everything is in M code. If a large amount of your query was referencing that filtered rows value, maybe a particular filtered rows value, you can just change it directly in the M code. But like I said, if you do that and you are not getting the desired result, you can always hit me up on LinkedIn. WhatsApp. We
Thank
can
you so
schedule a
much.
call. You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. I'm grateful.
All right, so Adekunle, you can unmute your mic.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Um, I may want to drag you back a bit, but I'm sorry. My question is, I always get confused about fact, the fact table and the dimension table. Please, can you just put me through that?
Okay, okay, no problem. So let me even open the your data, or let me go to the Power Pivot that we can to the data. So I'm going to change it from diagram view to data view. So in your data, essentially, what happens in your data? Let's take this business, for example. This business, somebody comes into the restaurant, they store the order, the particular order the customer made, the customer name, the name of the restaurant, how many products he bought, the amount, the order amount that the person did, and the time, the ratings, the food that the customer made. So let's take this as your business. You have an Excel sheet. Let's say you have an Excel sheet that on a day-to-day basis. And if you see, we have something called order dates. Other dates on a day-to-day basis. You come, a customer, a particular customer come in, he makes a purchase and he leaves. So you are storing that information in a table. You are storing that information about the purchase, the order, the rating, and the time the customers has spent in a table. Yeah. And because this table will keep on growing, we keep on growing on a day-to-day basis, right? This table, essentially, we have millions of record, and you will have a situation where this customer may come more than once, or may come 3 times, may come 4 times, may come 6 times, 5 times, right? And this restaurant, they may come to this particular restaurant like 5 times or 6 times, right? So this table, this long table that I said, it essentially grow on a frequent basis, like it grows periodically, is termed to be your fact table because it's in the sense of fact or your transaction now table in the sense of this table contains your all your transactions that typically occur in your business on a regular table on a regular basis. Now your dimension, what your dimension table is. Your dimension table is a table that is telling you more information about probably specific columns in this your fact table. So if you remember what I said is, if we were to use VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP, we could have added more columns to this data, essentially doing something called denormalization. I don't really want to start going into terminologies or context into this, but what denormalization is is moving a lot of files into a single flat file. A lot of us, if you are getting data on cargo, a lot of times the data is just in a single flat file. That is a highly denormalized model. But what normalization is essentially is storing information in different tables and essentially connecting them based on a key that they have in the data. So, like I said, if we want to find out more information about this restaurant, we need a table that will store information about the restaurant, the cuisine, the type, the location of the restaurant. This table must contain unique records. So you ask the question of your difference between your dimension and your fact table. This your restaurant table will contain unique records of that particular restaurant. That means this restaurant ID one must not be repeated more than 2 or 3 times. It will contain unique record of that your table, and it will provide us more information about that restaurant one. So what this dimension table is doing, it provides context about this restaurant ID that we have here. This restaurant ID that we have here. Restaurant one here, different customers may have come to restaurant one at different times, at different points in time. But we need to know more context about restaurant one. What's restaurant ID one? if you ask the question, what's restaurant ID? One, a dimension table provides us with that answer. What is restaurant ID? One. Now, another dimension table is this dimension table that we have here called our calendar dimension table. Now, I said when you are doing analysis, you consider the 4W, the who did what, when, and why. So these are calendar table. If you want to find out more information about when the event occurred, not just the other dates, you need to know, is it a Monday it occurred? Is it a Tuesday it occurred? Is it a Wednesday it occurred? Maybe is it even a public holiday it occurred? These are calendar table. Is a dimension that tells us more information about this order ID, about other dates that we have in our data. I hope I've been able to convince you. I'm not confusing, as they say. Are you with me?
All right, thank you very much, sir. So, Delvis, you can
I
unmute your
didn't get
mic.
feedback from the person that asked the question. Just need to be sure. Yeah.
What did he say?
I didn't get feedback from the person that asked the question.
Hello,
Just want to
this is
Yes,
Abdulwahid. Please, can I
I
go
get
ahead?
the message. Yes, thank you.
make
Hello, hello, this is Elvis.
Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
should
Hello.
David.
Idris go first or Abdulwahid? Who is speaking now?